all over media, both in the TV media, the online media, and the print media. We are seeing the trauma of that debate rear its head. The New York Times ran a series of op-eds calling on Joe Biden to drop out, which meant it was probably only a matter of time, and turns out a very small matter of time, before the editorial board of the New York Times comes out saying, to serve his country, President Biden should leave the race. President Biden has repeatedly and rightfully described the stakes in this November's presidential election as nothing less than the future of American democracy. Donald Trump has proved himself to be, has proven himself. I guess the editorial board ran out of editors to write this piece. Yeah. They were all copywriting. Nobody was editing. Has proven himself to be a significant jeopardy to that democracy. An erratic and self-interested figure unworthy of the public trust. He systematically attempted to undermine the integrity of elections. His supporters have described publicly a 2025 agenda that would give him the power to carry out the most extreme of his promises and threats. If he has returned to office, he has vowed to be a different kind of president, unrestrained by the checks on power built into the American political system. Mr. Biden has said that he is the candidate with the best chance of taking on this threat of tyranny and defeating it. His argument rests largely on the fact that he beat Mr. Trump in 2020. That is no longer a sufficient rationale for why Mr. Biden should be the Democratic nominee this year. At Thursday's debate, the president needed to convince the American public that he was equal to the formidable demands of the office he is seeking to hold for another term. Voters, however, cannot be expected to ignore what was instead plain to see. Mr. Biden is not the man he was 4 years ago. And 4 years ago, he wasn't much then. 8 years prior to that, yes. The president appeared on Thursday night as the shadow of a great public servant. He struggled to explain what he would accomplish in a second term. He struggled to respond to Mr. Trump's provocations. He struggled to hold Mr. Trump accountable for his lies, his failures, and his chilling plans. More than once, he struggled to make it to the end of a sentence. Mr. Biden has been an admirable president. Under his leadership, blah, blah, blah. We've seen this all before. I'm not going to go there. As it stands, the president is engaged in a reckless gamble. There are Democratic leaders better equipped to present clear, compelling, and energetic alternatives to a second Trump presidency. There is no reason for the party to risk the stability and security of the country by forcing voters to choose between Mr. Trump's deficiencies and those of Mr. Biden. It's too big a bet to simply hope Americans will overlook or discount Mr. Biden's age and infirmity that they see with their own eyes. If the race comes down to a choice between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, the sitting president will be this board's unequivocal pick. That is how much of a danger Mr. Trump poses. But given that very danger,
named Vagina.
But given that very danger, the stakes for the country and the uneven abilities of Mr. Biden, the United States needs a stronger opponent to the presumptive Republican nominee. To make a call for a new Democratic nominee this late in a campaign is a decision not taken lightly, but it reflects the scale and seriousness of Mr. Trump's challenge to the values and institutions of this country and the inadequacy of Mr. Biden to confront him.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
I mean, that would have actually been better than anything that he did. If he had launched into a Corn Pop story.
Yeah, just go full psycho and try and knock Trump off balance. Yeah, that would have been good.
And Corn Pop used to stroke the hair on my legs.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Democrats who have deferred to Mr. Biden must now find the courage to speak plain truths to the party's leader. The confidants and aides who have encouraged the president's candidacy and who sheltered him from unscripted appearances in public should recognize the damage to Mr. Biden's standing and the unlikelihood that he can repair it. Mr. Biden answered an urgent question on Thursday night. It was not the answer that he and his supporters were hoping for, but if the risk of a second Trump term is as great as he says it is, and we agree with him that that danger is enormous, then his dedication to this country leaves him and his party only one choice. The clearest path for Democrats to defeat a candidate defined by his lies is to deal truthfully with the American public. Well, that'd be a first for Democrats in a very long time. Yes. Acknowledge that Mr. Biden can't continue his race and create a process to select someone more capable to stand in his place to defeat Mr. Trump in November. It is the best chance to protect the soul of the nation, the cause that drew Mr. Biden to run for the presidency in 2019, from the malign warping of Mr. Trump. And it is the best service that Mr. Biden can provide to a country that he has nobly served for so long. All right, so Marquis de
dear
Davila could
leader.
have read that. Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was thinking as you were doing it.
Yeah, could have been that. Could have read that in character and in costume. What I'll say is this: the New York Times is kind of maybe unintentionally onto something. See, when they write that flattering bullshit, they actually mean it. But Joe Biden has always been a kind of egomaniac who felt very insecure about his abilities to rise to the level that he has risen to. He was always kind of ridiculed as the dumb, gaffe-prone, beer-drinking dullard who, even when he was vice president, Obama and Obama's team, they were all these snooty, Ivy League types who kind of looked down on Joe Biden a little bit. Oh, he's the idiot who can't talk. We put him on the ticket so that the white Midwesterners felt more comfortable about voting for a black guy with a Muslim name. So that must be part of why, if not mostly why, Joe Biden is so stubborn in his refusal to step down. It's a lot of ego. It's like Nixon's ego. Right.
I was going to say, I'm surprised more people don't draw a comparison to Nixon. I suppose it's because the people who write those kinds of op-eds never would make that comparison, even if they thought it privately. Right. He is very Nixonian in his resentments. He's like a Nixon who doesn't have a right to be embittered because he's not smart or talented.
Right, because he was never really worthy of more than he ascended to. In this case, he's punching way above his weight. He was punching way above his weight as the vice president. But his ego is what's motivating him. And so the way to get him to quit, well, first of all, you may as well just try telling him he already did quit. I mean, that has a 50-50 chance of working. You wanted to drop out? No, Joe, you dropped out.
You dropped out yesterday.
Yeah, you dropped out yesterday. Well, you don't remember?
You don't remember? It was between the salmon and the chocolate pudding.
Yeah, exactly. We gave the press conference and everything. It's cool. The way to get him to drop out, what this op-ed is kind of doing is it's hinting to him that, Joe, you could go down in history as a hero, as the man who served his country for 5 decades until the bitter end, until he could no longer stand on the stage. And then he withdrew for the good of the nation, for the soul of the nation, to pass the torch. He sacrificed himself for the good of the country. You would go down as the William Wallace of shit-liberty if you just withdrew from the race right now. You would be a hero.
And that's exactly
in these
how they should
eyes.
put it to him. Yeah,
that's how you would be a hero forever if you dropped out now. No, I don't believe that. I think whatever, everybody knows that. But I'm saying this is what you would tell him if you wanted him to drop out.
Well, he's going to be remembered as a symptom of the final collapse of the United States. The fact that he was made president. Him and Trump will both be remembered that way.
Right.
Like this is the mad emperor's final act.
Of course. But I'm saying flatter him. Tell him you can go down in history as the hero who fell on his sword to protect the future of his country, or you can go down, and this is where they'd have to get tough. You can go down as the most selfish bastard in American history who turned the keys back over to Donald Trump because your ego is too big to acknowledge that you obviously ran out of gas. That is how you put it to him if you want him out, because he is going to have to decide not to run. I know people are saying Jill Biden is pulling the strings. It's his call. It is his call. He has to release the delegates at the convention. So you got to get to him in some way. He's an egomaniac. He always has been an insecure egomaniac. Tell him you drop out, you go down as a hero. You stay in, you go down as the most selfish asshole in the history of the country. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
And so I think this op-ed kind of pursued the former.
He's also reputed to be a really nasty bastard. So he could just snap and growl at anyone who says that to him. Hey, I'll show you just because I want that to where's my pudding?
Yeah. Yeah. That could be too. That is certainly
you remind me of a flock of lemur. Where's my pudding?
Yeah, right. But the other part of this is that once the editorial board turns on you, I mean, how do they go back? How do they backtrack that? I mean, I guess they said in the article, look, if it comes down to it, we'll back him. But man, you have a lot of ink spilled A lot
There
of ink
is
spilled.
no level of debasement these people are not prepared to subject
Well, that is
themselves
true.
to. They do not have pride. They do not have dignity. They do not have shame. Yes, if the order comes down, it's Biden or bust, they will turn on a dime.
Oh yeah, they'll go back. They'll go back. But you know, you have to be all in on a candidate to run any kind of effective campaign, and they've showed their hand that they're not. They're not.
Yes,
They're
while
not in it.
Joe Biden is not the man he once was, he is 5 times the man that Donald Trump is.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, you'll see plenty of that, for sure.
Please clap.